It's a city famous for its caves, lace and of course football. But Nottingham's also long been recognised for its boozers. Old and new, fancy and not so fancy. Today we're delving into the stories that make up Nottingham's historic pub scene. The Great British Pub is of course known as a place where you can go for a good beer, but very often it's the focus of community life too. So where did it all begin? Well, today I've enlisted the help of a man who knows this city and its establishments like the back of his hand. Richard Tresidder, thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all. No, Kate.
We can obviously have a chat for hours about which pub is the oldest, but there's so much more to talk about, isn't there?
Yes, in 1760, for instance, when Nottingham was a town, there were something like 14 pubs along Long Row alone.
Wow, that's impressive.
Today, I think there are just two.
Really?
George and Dragon, I think it's now the George, and Yates's Wine Lodge.
So where are you taking me first?
I think we should go to Yates's.
I'm surprised by that. Yates's?
It's a gin palace.
Okay, sounds very snazzy. Let's go.
Let's go and have a look.
Tom, thank you so much for joining us on this glorious sunny day in Nottingham. I hear you and Richard have had a fair few nights out in Yates's.
We have indeed, yes.
But it's not just known for its good nights out and cheap booze, is it, Richard?
No. The pub opened in 1876. The planning application when it went in 1874 was very discreet. No one realised that what they were going to see was a gigantic gin palace, and it was built by Edward Barker Cox, a steel bar manufacturer, who made a lot of money out of it. But by the end of 1876, the chief constable was cross about it. The town clerk of Nottingham, Sir Samuel Johnson, was also cross about it.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, the problem was that gin was drunk in too much quantity. And there was too much drunkenness. And so the Yates family, who came from Lancashire, where I come from, they decided that the best way forward was to have wine bars. The temperance movement, of course headed up by people like Lloyd George and so on, wanted to ban drink altogether. But they took the view, A, that would be wrong anyway in principle, because why shouldn't people have a drink?
Why shouldn't they?
But also it wouldn't work. So the Yates family motto was, moderation is true temperance. And in the days when wine wasn't as fashionable as it is now, they brought the wine bars.
Edward Barker Cox made a lot of money out of it, and by the time he died, and he's buried in the General Cemetery, he was living in London, and he would come up here to hunt for the South Notts Hunt. So he was socially mobile.
Do you have a nice little quote as well about the...
Well, let me find here what the Chief Constable thought about it. The Chief Constable of Nottingham, W.H. Points, in his 1879 annual report to the Watch Committee, observed, there appears to be a growing tendency to extend licensed houses into flaring gin palaces and to extend small premises into much larger dimensions, affording greater attraction and facilities for drinking. And he was referring to the Talbot there. It is possible for publicans to extend and update their premises.
But despite all the controversy, this basically shaped what we know as a pub today.
It shaped Victorian drinking habits, and other pubs followed, but not necessarily on the same scale as Yates's. I mean, it was quite the Talbot, as it was then called. It was quite extraordinary.
And I bet there's been a few stories to tell over time in there.
Oh, well, when I first came and met this young reprobate, we used to go there regularly because it's... Another of the ethos of the Yates family was to have entertainment in their pubs of a civilised kind. And when we first used to drink there was a little quartet playing, you know, lovely light classical music and so on. And you could give them a tip and they'd play your favourite piece of music. One night I was in there with lots of folks. It was the Queen's birthday. And I went up to the woman who was in charge of the quartet, and I said, will you play, please, Land of Hope and Glory? Now, before I say any more, there used to be a chap in charge of the Market Square from the police called Tug Wilson. Have you heard of Tug Wilson?
Yes, I have.
He was a man who was miles high, and even more miles high, because in those days they had the bulbous helmets. And anyhow, he used to keep order all by himself in the Market Square, and it was a bit rowdy. So the woman got them all playing Land of Hope and Glory, so I stood on the table and got everybody singing Land of Hope and Glory. We're halfway through Land of Hope and Glory when this helmet appeared coming up the stairs. Young man, he said, get down off that table. I can hear this noise on the council house steps. That was the end of it, you know, all was stopped. Order was kept, and we all had a good laugh, and that was it. So that was the kind of thing that it was a very homely and jolly place.
What a story. Thank you so much, Tom. Is there any way we can find out more about the history of this place then?
Yes, we can go down to the county archives and we'll find the original plans.
These are amongst the 4 million documents that we have in the back strong rooms.
4 million?
4 million.
Wow.
Yes. So much as today you need to apply for planning permission whenever you build a building, or you had to do that in the Victorian period as well. So these are plans for some of the pubs that I understand you've been talking about. So under a bylaw in Nottingham City in the late Victorian period, you had to submit plans to the council, who could decide whether you could build your amazing pub or not.
That's amazing. And this one, I believe, is where we've been this morning. Is this Yates's?
This is what we call Yates's nowadays, but originally the Talbot. And this is the planning application of February 1874, submitted by an architect called W.A. Heasel for Edward Barker Cox. And just look at the size of this. This is no more than 4 inches high, but it was going to be a gin palace.
And then this is a map of Nottingham in kind of, what was the period of this one?
This is the 1890s, so it's about 1890, showing the how the city has expanded in the late Victorian period.
And so this is the city centre here, is it, Richard?
That's the city centre there. And around the old Market Square in 1760, around the small area that's concentrated the town, there were something like 120 pubs, and I would guess today there are probably fewer than 50.
That's incredible, isn't it? So we had a lot of pubs back then. I mean, that is not a small amount, is it, in a city centre?
People drank. It was better than the water. The quality of the beer was better than the water. If you were drinking water, it could be infected with typhoid and that kind of thing. So people drank beer. If you lived in the park, you might have sent you'd have sent one of your staff out to collect beer from one of the pubs that you drank at home. In the late 1890s, there was a move to corner pubs. Cross Keys was built about the time, I think, that the railway came through to the new Victoria station. So I think it was built in about 1899. And it's interesting because the landlord, I think, the man who had it built, moved up from London. He'd seen London pubs. And London pubs are often, and it's true elsewhere, built on corners. The idea of building on corners, it can be seen down more than one road. And I think the detail of this is interesting because this is how it was managed. Inside, you have a circular bar, a horseshoe-shaped bar.
Yes.
So the landlord could watch the 3 rooms from one place. And that allowed supervision, and it allowed the staff to serve customers quickly.
And what are these, Ruth?
Well, these are I suppose, in today's parlance, these would be the actual application forms that you would fill in. So they're often signed by the architects, and it basically says we're giving notice that we intend to erect a building. So even though they're asking permission, it's worded so that we're going to do this, you have to stop us.
Try and stop us, basically. I love that. Well, I think this is where we're heading to next. Is that right?
It is. And am I buying you a pint or are you buying me?
I think it's about time. I mean, come on. Hiya, can we have 2 of your finest Nottingham ales, please?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you very much. So this, we've just been looking at the plans. This is the real thing.
This is the real thing. This is the Cross Keys. There are 4 significant pubs of the late 19th century, and this is one of them. And it was built by somebody called Ezekiel Levi, who originally built the Thurland Hall on Thurland Street, and then that must have been a success, and he moved up here to build the Cross Keys. And I think that was at about the time that Fletcher Gate was being widened for the railway underneath, going to the Victoria Station.
Okay.
And Ezekiel Levi was a wine merchant from London, so he'd seen the kind of pubs going up in London, and he thought he'd copied them here. So he copied one at Thurland and then the Cross Keys. And this is a different architect. Mr. Evans was a Nottingham architect rather than the one that he used at the Thurland Hall.
Oh, thank you very much.
And look at this, I've been waiting all day.
Waitress service, thank you much. Sophie, you're the general manager, aren't you?
Yes.
And so what's it like to kind of be part of this kind of traditional historic building?
I think it's quite a proud thing, growing up in Nottingham myself. Obviously I've seen this pub change quite a lot, and we've always tried to keep it with the history of Nottingham and keep the traditionalness of being a pub with good real ale, good wine, good spirits.
Do you think people realise the history behind this pub?
Well, I've been working here for around 3 years, and one of the nicest things about working here is the fact that I get people of all different generations come in to tell me about their stories of Cross Keys and things that they've witnessed here or things that have happened here, different people that have run it, which is really nice to hear, because then I can use them stories to go on further to tell other people. So I think everyone has memories here.
Still to come, the mysteries surrounding one of Nottingham's most talked about pubs. So famous, it's now a world tourist attraction. Hello and welcome back to Rediscovering Notts, where we're hunting down some of the hidden histories behind some of Nottingham's famous pubs. And this is our next stop, isn't it, Richard?
This is the Rose of England on Mansfield Road, and we're going to go inside and meet Ian Wells, who will know something about it.
Perfect, let's go. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Lovely to see you.
Richard.
Ian, how nice to see you.
Thank you ever so much for joining us. You've got us a good spot at the bar, nice style. I
Absolutely,
like
yes.
your style.
Look at this,
thank you
and a
very much.
pint of beer.
As if by magic, I like that.
Absolutely, yes.
So this is it then?
This is it. The Rose of England was the landmark pub for the Nottingham Brewery next door. The brewery's gone, this survives, and this is what, one of 2 pubs, I think, that Watson Fothergill
We
survived.
did, yes, and the other one unfortunately has now been demolished, yeah. But it's important because of the survival by Watson Fothergill, who did so much for Victorian Nottingham. He's really one of the fathers of Victorian Nottingham. There's T.C. Hine, his sort of predecessor, who has the more refined houses like near the Playhouse. But Fothergill is really one of the Victorian rogue architects, somebody who really sort of enjoyed himself in his choice of materials, and really quite aggressive buildings sometimes to put on. You know.
But who is he? Who is Fothergill?
Well, he's a Mansfield lad, in fact, well connected. His father-in-law, in fact, was a brewer to do with the Mansfield Brewery. His own father was a lace manufacturer, trained in Nottingham, worked for a short time in London, and then set up on his own in Nottingham. In a building that actually, ironically, was demolished for the Great Central Railway, which of course was caused all the demolition around here.
Yeah, you're in kind of in a primed location right here,
Absolutely.
aren't you?
And I think it's interesting you say that, because 1898, in the anticipation of the new railway coming through here, and I wonder whether this, for the number of bedrooms it had, also did bed and breakfast for commercial travellers, that kind of thing. I mean, it really is a very attractive building.
It's a bit of a gem, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, it's so good that it survived because at the time when we were building the Victoria Station complex and the Victoria Centre, Victorian architecture was very much out of fashion. Victorian society had existed for 10 years, but it really was fighting and struggling. And we lost the Black Boy, which of course was the other Watson Fothergill pub in 1970 down on the square. So that was really the sort of battle that you had. We've unfortunately lost the interior of this one, but enough of an idea to get an idea of what sort of shape it was.
How important is it to keep these traditions and keep these historic pubs in Nottingham?
Well, I think they're part of what Gillian Clarke in a different context called the handwriting of the city. It's what it is, what made it.
And you can see around us, still to this day, it is a very busy, thriving pub.
Yes, yes, and it's still a pub. Whereas you go into town, pubs like the Dog and Bear, built in the mid-1870s, are now a pair of shops, which is very sad. On the outside, you've got the Dog and Bear, remind us that this city liked to have cockfights, dog fights, and bear fights.
Well, hopefully we won't see any of them on the way to the trip.
Well,
you never know.
We'll see what we can find for you.
So you can see the difference between this earlier 1896 plan for the Rose of England, which was disapproved.
Disapproved?
Yes, in big letters across the front of the
Oh,
application
dear.
and
Can I
over
have a
there.
look?
It says it was disapproved, and so they said they went to Watson Fothergill, and he produced this amazing plan with a beautiful, well, it's a work of art.
Oh yeah, there's the disapproved.
It is, yeah.
Brilliant.
So this is a work of art in its own right, and of course, if Watson Fothergill brings you these plans, you're not going to say no, are you?
They're very impressive, aren't they, Richard?
They're very impressive indeed. This was going to be the premier pub for the Nottingham Brewery, which was next door, and the directors were going to have a pub that was luxurious in their terms, and it's a complete piece of show-off, isn't it?
And you can just see so much more detail and colour as well.
This is just the degree of luxury. At the back here, you've got a parlour where you sat down and the drinks were brought to you. At the front, you had a counter where you stood at a bar, and upstairs you have a club room. Pubs often had a club room for meetings, and the idea of a luxury pub like this was to bring people out of their homes into somewhere comfortable.
You're starting to see kind of the hub, aren't you, of the community, and people would come here for social gatherings.
Social gatherings, and the club room may well be used for meetings of groups, of course, but maybe for entertainment as well.
And then this is the Thurland, isn't it?
The Thurland, to me, is one of the most interesting of pubs, built for Ezekiel Levi by an architect from Matlock, which is why I think the pub was built. The outside is stone, but what is interesting, yet again, you see this circular bar where the landlord from an office could supervise the three rooms there, and up on the first floor you had a billiard room. On
to the last set of plans, Ruth, and this is where the age-old debate comes in of which pub is the oldest in Nottingham. Can you tell us any information that might help us out?
Well, we don't have any building plans for when any of the pubs were built, because obviously they were all built too early before the government started restricting people. I mean, I do understand that there was some analysis done of some of the timbers, and they thought that the Bell's timbers were older than the others. That, of course, just means the wood was older. It doesn't necessarily mean the pub was older. But we've got no real evidence either way to say anything. I mean, this is really the only plan we've got for the trip to Jerusalem, which is quite a recent one.
So when's this one from?
So it usually says in the corner, I think this is early 1900s. And all we have for the Bell is a plan of the toilet block.
Okie dokie. I mean, every pub needs a toilet, right, Richard?
Yes.
certainly if you're drinking beer.
so it could be crucial.
Yes, it could be. But there's no real... I think this is the issue why it's such a big debate, because nobody really knows, and there's no real evidence, except for... It would be nice if it were the Trip or the Bell or the Sal. Obviously, I can't be biased.
It's interesting that the insistence by the council on improved toilet arrangements, lavatory arrangements, gives us plans of pubs and some idea how they worked. I think the Trip was probably built as a pub, a brew house for the castle. I think it dates from around the time the castle was rebuilt in around the 1760s. So you've got the cave behind with the modern frontage on the at the front, as it were.
And I think from a tourist point of view, the Trip is definitely by far the most popular, so it would be rude not to go and have a look at it.
Well, I think we see if the beer's still up to standard.
You would. Well, I can't think of a better place to wind up our tour of some of Nottinghamshire's most historic pubs than right here in the Trip. Carl, thank you so much for letting us come in and have a look around.
You're welcome.
Now, this is supposed to be one of the kind of most historic parts of Nottinghamshire and brings in thousands of tourists a year, doesn't it?
It does, certainly does, yeah. So people visiting the castle and then popping in for a pint or popping in for a meal, it's all part of the experience, really.
Because you claim to be one of the oldest pubs.
We do. Obviously, we kind of go back to the Sandstone when it was originally part of the brew house for the brewery, for the castle. So we know the Sandstone dates back to about 1070 or so.
It is incredible, isn't it, Richard? You can see it around us now.
Well, this sandstone is typical of Nottingham. Many pubs have very deep cellars built out of the sandstone, and that accounts for the quality of the beer and the right temperature. In the 18th century, there were two pubs in Brewhouse Yard, one called the Gate Hangs Well. The earliest reference is 1760 to a pub called the Pilgrim, and by 1800 it had become the Trip to Jerusalem. By 1909, the Gate Hangs Well had disappeared, but this remained. And so what's the date of this building? We don't really know, because how were the caves that we're in now used? But the building outside probably dates from about 1675, when the castle was rebuilt for the Dukes of Newcastle.
And there's lots of legends as well in this place, aren't there?
There certainly are. Probably the most famous legend and tale is the Cursed Galleon.
I like it already.
Yeah, it's been renowned. So basically, it's always been within the pub. It used to house downstairs, actually, in the first room, in the wardroom, where it was kind of hung from the ceiling there. The legend goes that a gentleman came in off the street, came in for a beer, and he kind of racked up a bit of a bar bill and couldn't pay for it at the end, as you do. Kind of got lost count of how many beers he had, and he kind of offered this kind of handmade galleon as part of his payment. So the owners at the time accepted it, and they kind of saw it as a bit of a trophy, kind of fitting in with the whole crusade and everything else. So they hung it from the ceiling, and obviously back then, obviously the smoke and everything else, and the cobwebs and everything, it got filthy. So they decided to clean it or maintain it, and then certain series of events started to happen, and then people got ill, and then people started to die. So people started to be weary of it. So then they kind of left it. So it's kind of always been left not cleaned, where the cobwebs was going to feet. You know, it literally hung from the galleon itself, and that's where it was housed for hundreds of years. And then in 1996, the pub had a bit of a refurbishment, opening up certain rooms in the chimney, and it got rehoused above us here.
Ooh, I feel a bit spooked out.
People always ask, well, who put it in the box? You know, who was, you know,
brave enough to actually touch the galleon.
Put it in the box there. But it was actually one of the ladies was retiring. She was been a cleaner at the pub for a long time, and she wanted to kind of do it, sort of thing. And sadly, within 6 weeks, she passed on.
That's terrifying.
And that's the tale. You know, that's the legend of it. So even now, we get people say they've took pictures of it, and it's kind of deleted images off their phone and stuff like that. So people, you know, the legend still lives.
Well, thank you ever so much, Carl. What a day we've had, though, Richard. It really has been amazing, hasn't it?
It's been super. We should do it again. Let's have another pub crawl.
There's definitely more to Nottinghamshire pub scene than meets the eye. Let's do it. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers.